What I've learned is that you don't have to be the best to say something that still really helps someone. That's the most important thing. That's the thing surely that we should really care about. What I think a lot of people don't realise when they're chasing success is that it's as much about your mentality as it is your method. It's really easy for us to get involved in how do we find the best tactic or strategy or tip to grow our following and to get our success. But that's missing out on the fact that if we're engaging in negative behaviours, if we're insecure, if we're comparing ourselves to other people all the time, we're never going to get that long-term success. And most importantly, we're never going to be happy. It might be a short-term kick when you get another follower, but ultimately, if you're not happy up here and you don't believe in yourself, you're always going to be beating yourself up. Comparison really is all about weighing up your perception of yourself against your perception of everybody else. It adds this clause to your sentence, so now instead of saying, this is what I'm doing, you're saying, this is what I'm doing, whereas this is what they're doing. Now our success isn't about how we feel about ourselves, but instead how we match up to somebody else. It's not, are we good, it's, are we as good as them? I think comparison can be unhelpful, especially when we use it as a way of belittling what we've done, because we have these unrealistic standards of what success is. You might see a YouTube video of somebody that says, I gained 10,000 subscribers in 1 week, and then when you don't do that, even though you've made amazing things and you've helped people, you see yourself as a failure because you didn't stack up to them. Making a meaningful difference in someone's life should always be more valuable than a number on a screen. You might be comparing yourself and saying, I'm not as good as them because I don't have as many followers. But actually, the impact that you're having on the people that do follow you might be way better in comparison to this person over here who, yes, has a lot of attention, but isn't giving the value that you are. We can also use comparison as kind of a shield to protect ourselves from rejection. It's easy to look at somebody else and be like, well, I'm never gonna reach that, I'm never gonna be as good as them, so why would I even try? And guess what happens then? We just stop trying. The harsh reality of comparison is that even if you get as good as the person that you're comparing yourself to now, there'll always be someone else, there'll always be a higher standard, there'll always be a greater goal that you need to reach. And fine, that's fair enough if you're using it to motivate you to grow and to develop. But I think the reality is what most of us do is see it as a way of telling ourselves we're not good enough. And if we're using it in that way, we're never gonna be good enough. If you spend your whole life comparing yourself to everyone, you'll never value the achievements you've made. You'll never recognize your own success. You'll never feel fulfilled in yourself. I'm registered blind, so personally I've often compared myself to people who have full sight, whose eyes are wider and brighter and more beautiful. And I remember my heart always used to sink when I would read dating articles and people would say the first thing they noticed about someone was their eyes. And every time I read that I thought, well, that's me out of the game then. But that was silly because that was only one aspect of their life, one tiny part of who they are. Let's say our benchmark is followers. We have to ask ourselves, does the fact that somebody has more followers than us inevitably mean that they're happier than us? In many cases, absolutely not. What is their home life like? What is their work life like? Do they like themselves? There are so many other factors and so many things that are more important in life than just that one thing. I would say the major flaw in comparison is that we're usually comparing ourselves to the best parts in other people's lives. People say you're comparing your backstage to their highlights reel. In other words, there are definitely parts of their life that if you compared your own to theirs, you'd win. You'd come off better. There are things in their life that you wouldn't want in yours. I think that's what makes it negative, is when we decide to cherry pick and we ignore everything else. We're just focusing on this one thing and telling ourselves, because they have that, their life must be so much better than mine and I'm never gonna be as good as them. Comparison can often kid us into thinking that we know everything about the person's life who we're comparing ourselves to, and very often we don't even know the person at all. We have no idea what they might be going through. We've all watched as rich and famous people, the people that everyone would probably say, I wish I could be more like them, have just given up on life. So yes, they may have had some amazing things, but they also obviously had an awful lot of pain. Very often that's pain that they keep hidden in the shadows, behind the scenes, pain that we have no idea about until it comes out. Even if it's someone you know really well, it could be your best friend or a family member. You don't know every aspect of their life. We all know how easy it is to hide things from other people, and often the reason that they're doing that is because, ironically, they're comparing themselves to somebody else. There can be benefits to comparison. I think the main one being that it gives us more self-awareness. We can look at the people we're comparing ourselves to and say, what does that tell me about myself, who I am, and my aspirations? Once we have that information, we have more clarity, and we can start working on those goals in a much more productive way. They don't have to be people we envy, they can be people who inspire us. If you let it, it can give you clarity on what you see as success, rather than just mindlessly judging yourself by everybody else's standards. I don't think there's a magic cure to comparison. I think it's something we have to work on every single day. It's all well and good to say to yourself, I'm never gonna compare myself to anyone ever again, but what happens 3 hours from now when you see a post on social media that tells you somebody is doing better than me? It's in all of those little micro moments that we have to tell ourselves, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not gonna play that game. I will not compare myself. It's all about taking the focus off everyone else and putting it back on yourself. Every second you spend comparing yourself to somebody else is time you could be spending moving forward. Life isn't a competition. It's not an us and them situation. Happiness doesn't lie in, can I be better than somebody else? Real happiness lies in getting up every day, consistently showing up, and trying to be the best version of yourself. I hope this video has helped you in some way. Let me know what you took away from it in the comments below, and I'll speak to you soon. And so we can't really make a judgment on whether their life... It's all well and good to say, oh, I'm never going to compare... What am I trying to say here? But what happens 3 hours from now, when we care about the numbers